I think if you went to the booth upstairs, the Mampu booth, you probably can pick up a brochure called My TCOE, right? The Testing Center of Excellence, right? My means MY, right? Malaysia, right? Malaysian Testing Center of Excellence. So that's a little bit of the background, right? So we have spent a lot of time studying what is going on in the US and other places. We have also spent a lot of time here working with MSTV and Mampu and talking about all the different aspects. And based on that, a handbook is putting together. My colleague, most of you know me well because this is my 7th or 8th soft tech, but my colleague here, be very careful of her, because if you have a job, she will kick you away and take your job, right? 10 years ago, I came to the University of Memphis to be chair of the business IT department, and guess who has the job now, right? So see, she booted me out. Then about 5 years ago, I was given an honorary chair. Remember, like a donated chair called the Papasan. Larry Papasan is a very famous man in Memphis. He donated a chair. You know what I mean? Not a chair like this, but an honorary chair, right? Called the Larry. I was given the Papasan chair for exemplary leadership in the university. And guess what? Guess who has the chair now? His friend too. So jaga ni, huh? So anyways, Robin has been, I've been mentoring her for many years. She's my protege at the university, and as I get more responsibility, she keeps taking all of them. So she's the magic woman. Even for this project, she's the one who's doing, the development and the writing. I'm the requirements person because, I understand Malaysia really well, and so I'm the front, but she's been pretty. Robin, please take it.
Thank you, Jasbir. Well, we all have mentors, right? I hope you have a mentor too, right? And that's Jasbir for me. He's taught me a lot. He's over the last 10 years, and I appreciate working together with you. It's been a great ride. So hopefully you guys have a mentor, because that's important for your career and your life and learning. So I do want to get into the handbook though, okay? Since we are, that's what we're supposed to be talking about. But I'm glad y'all are here today because we want to share with you what we're doing with the handbook, how it's being created, and Jasbir gave you a really good background for why we're doing this and how we're approaching this task. What we did is we sat down as a team and we started to all the system testing researchers and said, all right, what are the best practices in this area of verification and validation? So when it comes to testing, how do companies do it in the United States, multinational, global companies, and then the public sector, the agencies that work for the government. We work with a lot of agencies like the Department of Defense, and the list is too long, so I can't go through them all, but we sat down and thought about how does IVV, independent validation and verification, work in the real world. Made a list, and then we looked at what was going on with PPSA. I'll talk about that more. That's some pilots that y'all have very smartly taken on and looked at and done a proof of concept to show how IVV could really work and learn lessons from that. So we took those lessons learned and have built that into this handbook. And so it's, we're talking about a handbook that should be very readable. It should give you guidance. When you go to hire an IVV vendor, how do you do it? What are the practical implications and things you have to think about? Like, what are the tests? What types of tests do you even let an IVV do, right? And the tests may differ depending on the situation. Whether you're building an ICT from scratch, right? You had a manual process and now you're making a whole new one. Or if you're taking one and modifying one you already have. It might change the types of tests that you use. So the handbook will go into that. Jasbir has told you that this is a commonplace activity. IVV is common around the world. And so it's awesome to see Malaysia actually embrace this as a concept. So I'm very excited. The reason it needs to be independent is because what is testing all about? What is testing about? What do we do? Assurance, yeah. And can we assure our own stuff? Can we say we're great? Actually, we probably will say we're great, even when sometimes we might not be, right? So we need an independent party to check on us, to assure, to look at how we've done things, and if we've done them properly, and if we're reporting the right information about the ICT as the life cycle, as the procurement process is taking place, right? We need an objective third party to assure that we can continue to move forward through that life cycle. Okay.
And one of the one of the real reasons why IVV is so popular is because it is a procurement method. It's actually a procurement method. We all testers, we all like to say, well, it's, this is a testing. Well, sure, it came out of testing. You know what I mean? It came out of testing, high-risk technology systems. That's where it came from. But actually, it's a procurement method to ensure that you get what you pay for. You know what I mean? So that's why in the public sector, where you're spending the public's money, right, it becomes really important. So it's so the way to think about it, for software governance, remember it's a software governance method. At the same time, it's an ICT procurement method, and the two come together in the end.
Yeah, and that's what the handbook talks about. So that's great. So the handbook will actually is targeted for not only agencies that will be hiring a vendor, right, an IVV vendor, but the vendors themselves. What are the services a vendor is going to need to supply to an agency? And so this outlines everything that both sides, both parties will need to think about. Oh, we kind of talked about some of this stuff. We talked about the keeper of the handbook. The keeper is important because as we need to update it and change it over time, readdress things, update, disseminate it, maybe take whatever needs to be done with the handbook. Someone's got to be responsible, right? There's different types. At the top right-hand corner, you'll see PMO, TMO. What's a PMO? Project Management Office. Yep, and I heard it in the back of the room too, right? Project Management Office. How many people have a Project Management Office? Uh-oh, what's going on, y'all? Who's running your projects? Right? So we need a project management office to run the project, to actually make sure all the details are being followed through on, right? So we need to have a project management office, and that office needs to coordinate with the test management office. Okay? So that is a best practice worldwide. We have companies in the United States, this is what they do. I would say probably every company we work with that's a Fortune 500 company definitely does this, and the government agencies as well. You have to have both of those offices working in coordination. We'll talk about 3 different relationships. Did you want to add something?
Now I was going to say there are 2 types of plans for large ICT for large ICT acquisitions that are very important. One is something called the project plan, which sits in the PMO, and then there's something called the quality plan that sits in the TMO, and those 2 have to be aligned. And I think if you study a lot about how large IT departments are maintained, there's a whole theory about alignment. How do you align these 2? Which drives what? Can a project plan drive a quality plan, right? Or should the quality plan drive the project plan? So that's the way to think about PMO and TMO. And the more critical the system that you're developing, then you better make sure the TMO has a lot of influence over the PMO. I'll give you an example. For example, when in the spaceship program, when the rocket is going up, right? If there's one component that doesn't work, right? That one component can lead to, just like what happened to Challenger, it blowing up in the sky, right? Now, in those kind of situations, you better make sure the test manager or whoever is running the TMO, right, has override or even veto authority over the project plan, even though they may be in a hurry to shoot it off because now the clouds have cleared. So that's why this relationship in IVV between the PMO and TMO is a very complex one and a very important one. And so you have to design it to fit the circumstances. And that is a key component of an IVV, and how it functions.
That's right, Jasper. And actually, Jasper has written papers on this topic. So if you'd like to see those, I'm happy to help get them to you. But this is absolutely critical. The quality plan is the driver in many cases, especially, for example, healthcare systems. How many people here have ever been to the doctor and the system, if it said the wrong information to the doctor, you could get a bad surgery or a bad diagnosis and it can hurt people, right? And we actually have had systems that have killed people as a result. So there are critical systems in play that we have to make sure quality is the driver. The bottom left-hand side, you'll see phases. So there's engagement phases. Before you hire the IVV, independent verification validation vendor, while you have that company working with you, that vendor working with you, And then afterward, there's certain things that have to happen, and so the handbook will document those. There's also, oh, you know what, bottom right is the different ways you might run an ITC procurement project, right? Ground up being you're building it from scratch. There is no, it's all manual right now, and you're going to build an actual computer system to replace the manual. Second one, legacy disposed. You have a system, but you're going to build a new one, and you're going to get rid of that old one. The third one is enhancement. You have a system, but you're going to make some major modifications to it, and so there's a lot of work that needs to be done to enhance the system. And then production systems. You actually, a lot of the companies in the United States, especially the criticals, the mission critical systems, have ongoing testing going on to ensure that as the system is being used and as the world changes, as the user population changes, the system is still meeting those needs. So we're still validating that system, verifying it's still working. And so production systems also there's a role for an IVV in that. The handbook will outline in each of these scenarios what needs to get done by the IVV and the agency itself as well. As we were talking about all this, there's actually additional services that in the United States are very important for critical systems. Actually for all systems, but especially for critical ones. Risk assessments and security assessments are key. Risk assessments help you figure out where to put all your effort and your work as a tester. The things that are more risky, you want to test for, and the things that are less risky, you test less. And so unless you do an assessment of what those are, how they're being managed throughout the ICT procurement life cycle, unless you're actually monitoring that, and that's what an IVV can do. Monitor, report on that, and you can understand how are things getting riskier as the project goes along, or are we reducing our risk of a problem once we release it?
And some organizations even have something called the risk management office, because like for example, one case in Canada, where they were implementing they call it the CANDU reactor, C-A-N-D-U, remember, because Canada can do, that's why they call it CANDU, a nuclear reactor. Now, if you have a nuclear reactor close to a city where people are living, you better make sure nothing goes wrong, right? In that sense, because radioactivity. And so now in those kind of situations, the TMO is actually called the RMO, the Risk Management Office. But again, you want to have a third-party independent player managing those services because they're just critical. Same thing, I'll give you another example which I'm going to talk about later too, is in the US, in the aerospace sector, there's something called the National Safety Transportation Board, NSTB, right? And nothing to do with New Straits Times, right? And same thing, each time a plane crashes anywhere in the world, they are there in 2 days because they want to know why, which component was at fault, because overall it fits into a risk model. And that's why flying is now the safest way of traveling, pretty much. So the same idea is a third party, an independent third party, comes in and investigates, and that's investigates and advises. So same concept. That's also IVV, right? Independent verification and validation in terms of diagnosing what happened in the case of a crash. You know what I mean? That's precisely the same.
Right. Yes, sir.
The last bullet over there, it says project management office operations. Are you referring to the PMO teams or are you referring to the TMO? What it is? You referring to the PMO instead of the TMO?
Right, so the idea being that a TMO can actually lead the PMO, right? So a TMO can actually provide project management services as well. Yeah. And maybe in certain cases should, right? We should be driven by quality in many cases, and especially the examples Jasper gave, right? Okay, good question. I want to hit on the second one real quick. Cybersecurity, I don't know, anyone heard about problems in that area? Anyone? No problems at all? No problems with cybersecurity. Okay, well then maybe I should just skip this one, huh? In the US, I'll tell you right now, we have a company in Memphis called AutoZone. They sell car parts. It's very popular, 3,500 stores across North America. And they actually have security violations. They have 5,000 security violations a day on their systems. People trying to hack in, trying to get free car parts, trying to steal money, trying to steal credit card information. And we see in the news every day where violations are taking place. So security is huge in the United States. There's major investment going on in this space from a national level, from a federal government level, and the state of Tennessee, as a matter of fact, and all states are really putting money into how do we get our hands around this. So an IVV can help.
So it's no longer acceptable for you to say, oh, my system is fully tested, right? But then there are big security holes. You know, you launch it and the first day someone mounts an attack on it and it goes down. It's not enough. So that's a responsibility, a new responsibility we testers have. Yeah. And a part of the IVV concept is to bring in those kind of expertises too. When you need it, as part of the IVV model.
Right. Yep. So an IVV will augment the skills that you already have. Because I know you guys are all very smart, have lots of good people that you work with, but sometimes we need a little help, right, with certain state-of-the-art technologies and ideas and way to do things. So an IVV can help there. This is the table of contents. I think what I do want to point out real quick, well, we're going to go through some of these, but the history of PPSA. PPSA is the pilot.
Because IVV leads to a quality culture is there will be an industry emerging to provide IVV services, not just for Malaysia but for the region and internationally as well. Now once those companies emerge, private sector companies may want to access those IVV services too, right? Because even a private company buys very critical software all the time. So same thing. Like for example, virtually every large corporation in the US, right, that has a huge testing operations has a TCOE. Remember, a testing center of excellence. That is a keeper of some guidelines, right? The handbook guidelines. So even private companies do this. So if there's a private sector group that provides IVV services, private companies can access those. So this gives you a kind of an inclination about what to. Now I want to point out section 2 is very important because setting up, one of the toughest things to do in an IVV engagement is setting up the legal templates and the processes, right? Especially in the government sector, we're very complex. Whenever there's public money involved, you have to go through a very rigorous process to access it, right? So I think that is a huge part of the handbook. Hopefully, and this is just a draft. We haven't finalized anything until November, right? But that's why this is a preview. So that's a key part, helping you step through the different, milestones and the processes to be able to do IVV, and that's really a key part of it. Go on, Robin.
Yeah, absolutely true. In the U.S. Federal government has also, there's a law or a mandate that they have to learn from industry. So industry, private companies work with public companies to come up with best practices for their TMO, and they have to learn from each other, right? So it's mandated for us. I want to give you a little background just to make sure we're all understanding verification and validation, right? Verification. We're testing to the requirements. Did we actually build the system right? Right? What we specified, did we build it right? Validation is then looking at something a little more than that. We're going to test to the business reality. Is the system going to be useful and suitable for those that will be using it? Right? We might have built something that was spec'd out, but it's not going to be useful. What's the point? So validation actually takes that other side of the picture. And we have to make sure we're covering both sides and that we're building the right system as well. And you can see a number of other pieces to that. Okay?